The station floated between two suns, quiet and bright, like a coin held between fingers. Humans had built only a small part of it. Most of the structure belonged to older species, older ideas, and older rules. To humanity, it was called Haven Ring. To the rest of the galaxy, it was a testing ground. Elias Rook stood near the long glass wall of the diplomatic hall, hands behind his back, posture calm in the way only long training could teach. Outside the glass, ships drifted in careful lanes, shining like insects trapped in amber light. He had seen battlefields, burning cities, and dark space full of screaming alarms. This place made him more uneasy than any of those. First meetings always did. Across the room, the alien delegation waited. They were already seated, already still, already watching. Their species was known as the Kirellen, a people famous for calm voices, gentle movements, and a long history of avoiding open war. The official briefings described them as peaceful to a fault, reliable, safe. At the center of them sat the woman. She was small, smaller than Elias had expected. If she stood, her head would barely reach his shoulder. Her frame was narrow, her limbs slender, her skin a soft pale blue that caught the light like water. She wore simple robes without symbols or rank marks, just smooth fabric that flowed when she moved. Her large dark eyes were focused on the table in front of her, hands folded neatly, posture relaxed. She looked harmless. Elias felt his guard tighten anyway. The human delegation entered as a group, boots soft against the polished floor. There were diplomats, scientists, military observers, and security officers spaced carefully along the walls. Elias took his assigned place near the front, slightly behind the lead ambassador. His role was advisory. Observe. Protect if needed. Say little. The meeting began with formal greetings, translated smoothly through implants and station systems. Voices echoed gently in the vast hall, respectful and controlled. The Kirellen spoke with slow precision. Their words were careful, their tone polite, almost warm. When it was her turn, the small alien woman lifted her head. "My name is Cirrus," she said. Her voice was soft, almost musical, and very clear. "I am honored to serve as liaison between our peoples." She inclined her head slightly toward the human ambassador, then toward Elias and the others. The movement was small, exact, and graceful. Elias studied her face. No visible weapons, no armor. No guard standing behind her. She did not look like someone sent to negotiate power or threat. She looked like someone sent to soothe. The ambassador smiled and replied with practiced ease, speaking of cooperation, shared futures, and mutual understanding. Elias half listened, his attention drifting across the room, tracking security positions, exits, and the subtle movements of the alien delegates. Ceres listened intently, eyes steady, expression calm. When the ambassador finished, she nodded again. "Your words carry weight," she said. "We have watched humanity for a long time. You grow quickly." Elias noticed the phrasing. Not progress. Grow. "Sometimes growth is messy," the ambassador replied lightly. "But we learn fast." "Yes," Ceres said. "You do." Something about the way she said it made Elias shift his weight. Talks continued. Trade routes. Shared research. Defensive agreements. Carefully phrased, the Kirellen asked thoughtful questions. They showed concern for human political divisions, resource strain, and internal conflicts. They spoke like caretakers, not rivals. That should have been reassuring. Instead, Elias felt like a knife was being measured against his spine. Halfway through the session, a subtle vibration passed through the floor. Almost nothing. A tiny shiver, like distant thunder. Elias noticed it immediately. His eyes flicked to the security officer nearest the wall. The officer's jaw tightened. A second vibration followed, stronger this time. The lights dimmed for a fraction of a second. The station's emergency systems did not activate. that was wrong. Elias raised his hand slightly, a signal only his team recognized. Several humans straightened almost imperceptibly. The ambassador kept talking, unaware or choosing not to react. Sirius's head tilted. Her eyes shifted, not toward the humans, but toward the ceiling. A third vibration hit, sharp and close. Somewhere beyond the walls, metal screamed. The Kirilan delegation reacted instantly. Not with panic, not with shouting, they moved with sudden, terrifying speed. Saris was on her feet before Elias had time to reach for his sidearm. Alarms finally wailed. Red light washing over the room. A voice boomed from hidden speakers, distorted and urgent. Security breach. All personnel. The sentence cut off. Elias stepped forward, instinct taking over. His job was to protect the delegation, keep the ambassador alive, get them out if needed. He took one step. Saris moved. The space between them vanished. One moment, she was 3 meters away. The next, her hand was on his chest, and the world slammed sideways. Elias hit the wall hard enough to drive the breath from his lungs. Metal rang. The impact rattled his teeth. His feet left the floor as invisible force pinned him there, his back pressed flat, his arms locked at his sides. For a split second, his training failed him. Ceres stood close, one hand against his chest, the other braced lightly on the wall beside his head. Her face was inches from his. Her eyes were calm, focused, not angry. "I am sorry," she said quietly. Elias tried to move. His muscles strained. Nothing happened. The pressure on his chest was immense, like gravity had doubled just for him. "Do not draw your weapon," Saris continued. "Do not move!" Around them, chaos erupted. Human security shouted commands. Kirilan delegates moved with sharp, efficient purpose, forming protective positions with bodies that moments ago had looked fragile. A human guard raised his rifle. Ceres did not look at him. "If you fire," she said softly, "he will die." Elias's heart pounded. His mind raced. He assessed angles, force, options. There were none. He could barely breathe. "What is happening?" he managed to force out. Ceres' eyes flicked to his, and for the first time, he saw something behind the gentleness. Not cruelty, not rage, calculation. "There are those who believe humanity is careless," she said. Loud, easy to provoke. Another explosion rocked the station. Closer now. The wall behind Elias vibrated, humming under strain. "They have chosen this place to test you," she continued. "And us?" She released him suddenly. Elias dropped to the floor, coughing, gasping for air. His hands shook as he pushed himself upright. Before he could speak, Saris had already turned away, issuing rapid commands to her people in a language that sounded nothing like the gentle tones used before. Human security flooded the room, weapons raised. The ambassador shouted orders demanding explanations. Saris faced them again, hands empty, posture relaxed. "The attack was expected," she said. "Not here. Not today. But soon." Elias stared at her, chest still aching. The imprint of her hand felt burned into his uniform. "You could have warned us," he said hoarsely. She looked at him directly. "We did," she replied. "You did not believe us." Before he could respond, the station lights flickered again, this time staying dim. Emergency bulkheads began to slide into place. Outside the glass wall, a ship burned silently, breaking apart in slow motion. Ceres folded her hands once more. "Human Elias Rook," she said. "You move quickly. You protect without hesitation. That is why I stopped you." He met her gaze, anger and confusion mixing in his chest. "You slammed me into a wall," he said. "Yes," she agreed, "because if you had stepped forward, The device hidden in the floor would have reacted to your implant signal. The room would no longer exist. The hull fell silent. Elias looked down at the floor beneath his boots. "How do you know my name?" he asked. A faint smile touched her lips. Small. Gentle. "Because," she said, "your species is very interesting. And very dangerous. Even when you do not realize it yet." Another distant explosion echoed through the station. Ceres turned toward the sealed doors. "This was only the beginning," she said calmly. "And now we must survive the next part." Elias watched her walk away, the memory of impossible strength still heavy in his bones, and understood one thing clearly. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake, and so had he. The emergency lights cast long red shadows across the corridor as Elias followed the sound of boots and hurried voices. The air felt heavier than before, thick with heat and the sharp smell of burned metal. Somewhere deep in the station, alarms wailed in uneven waves, as if even the machines were unsure what would happen next. Ceres walked ahead of him, calm and unhurried, her small figure moving smoothly through the chaos. 2 Kirellan guards flanked her, their bodies low and balanced, eyes scanning every surface. Up close, Elias could see that they were not fragile at all. Their movements were controlled, dense with strength, like coiled springs. Human security teams rushed past in the opposite direction, shouting into comms, weapons raised. Some glanced at Ceres with open suspicion. Screens lined the walls, displaying maps, heat signatures, and damage reports. Human officers filled the space, voices overlapping as they tried to regain control. The room went quieter as Ceres stepped inside. The human commander turned sharply. "You," she said, pointing. "You knew this was coming." Ceres met her gaze evenly. "We knew something would come, not its shape." "People are hurt," the commander snapped. "We lost 2 patrols in the lower ring." "I am aware," Ceres said softly. "And I regret it." Elias watched the exchange carefully. There was tension, but also something else. Fear, not just of the attackers, but of the unknown standing calmly in the middle of the room. "Why Haven Ring?" Elias asked. "Why attack here?" Ceres turned to face him fully. "Because it is neutral," she said. "Because it is watched. And because humans are here." A large display flickered, showing a damaged section of the station hull. Beyond it, stars burned cold and distant. "There are powers in this galaxy," Ceres continued, "that do not like uncertainty. Humanity is uncertain. You adapt. You change rules. You survive where logic says you should not." "That's not a crime," Elias said. "No," she agreed. "But it is dangerous to those who prefer control." Another explosion shook the station, farther away this time. The lights held. "Why didn't your people stop this before it started?" the commander demanded. Ceres lowered her head slightly. "Because if we had, the message would have been sent somewhere else. To your colonies. To your worlds." The room fell silent again. Elias felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "So this is a warning." "Yes," Ceres said. "To you, and to us," a technician called out from one of the consoles. "We're tracking energy spikes near Dock 7. More drones, inbound." Elias straightened. "That dock leads straight into civilian quarters." Ceres was already moving. The corridors near Dock 7 were narrower, built for traffic, not combat. Panic filled the air as civilians were rushed away under flashing guidance lights. Some cried. Some shouted. Some froze where they stood, unable to process what was happening. Elias ran alongside Ceres now, no longer questioning her pace. She moved like the station was part of her, turning corners without slowing, stepping over debris without breaking stride. A drone dropped from the ceiling ahead of them, unfolding mid-air, weapons powering up. Elias raised his rifle. Ceres leapt. She struck the drone before it could fire, her body twisting in a way that made no sense to human joints. The machine slammed into the wall and shattered, fragments clattering across the floor. Another drone emerged from a side passage. Elias fired this time, shots hitting center mass. The drone staggered but kept coming. Ceres planted one foot and drove her hand forward. The impact crushed the drone inward, collapsing its core. It dropped, lifeless. Elias stared for a half a second too long. "Focus," Ceres said calmly. They reached Dock 7 just as the outer doors began to open. A massive shape pressed against the gap, forcing its way inside. Elias felt the station tremble. "That's not a drone," he said. "No," Ceres agreed. "That is a test." The attackers poured in, armored figures moving with practiced coordination. Their weapons were advanced, their movements disciplined. They were not here to conquer the station. They were here to measure response. Human security engaged immediately, firing from cover. The air filled with noise and light as energy bolts and solid rounds crossed the space. Ceres moved into the fight without hesitation. She did not shout. She did not rush blindly. She flowed through the chaos, redirecting attacks, breaking weapons, disabling enemies with strikes that looked gentle but ended fights instantly. Elias fought beside her, covering angles, protecting retreating civilians, dragging a wounded officer to safety when a blast knocked him down. Between bursts of fire, Elias spoke. "You could have stayed out of this." Ceres deflected a blade with her forearm, twisted, and sent the attacker crashing into a cargo crate. "We chose not to," she said. "Why?" he pressed. "Because," she replied, "we remember what it is like to be judged too early." The battle ended as suddenly as it began. The remaining attackers withdrew, retreating back through the dock doors. The station sealed behind them, locking space tight again. Smoke hung in the air. The sounds of wounded filled the space. Elias lowered his weapon slowly. Human medics rushed in. Engineers began sealing damage. The immediate danger had passed. Ceres stood still amid the movement, her breathing calm, her posture relaxed once more. To anyone who hadn't seen her fight, she looked exactly like she had at the start of the meeting. Small, gentle, sweet. Elias walked up to her. "They weren't trying to win," he said. "No," she agreed. "They were counting." "Counting what?" She looked at the sealed dock doors, then at the humans working together around her. "How fast you respond," she said. "How you adapt under pressure. How much you are willing to risk for each other." Elias nodded slowly. And what did they learn? A faint, unreadable expression crossed her face. "That," she said, "remains to be seen." The station lights began to return to normal. The alarms quieted. But the feeling Elias had in his chest did not fade. This had not been an attack meant to destroy. It had been a question. And humanity had just answered louder than anyone expected. The station took a long time to calm down after the fighting stopped. Smoke was pulled into vents. Damaged walls were sealed with fast-growing foam. The sounds of alarms slowly faded into a low hum. People moved more carefully now, like the ground might break again if they stepped too hard. Elias sat on a metal bench near the medical bay, watching medics work. His hands were steady, but his mind was not. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the wall against his back again. The impossible pressure, the calm voice apologizing while holding him like he weighed nothing. Across the room, Ceres stood with two human officers. She listened more than she spoke. Her head tilted slightly, eyes focused. She looked untouched by the fight. No blood. No torn clothing, not even heavy breathing. It bothered Elias more than he wanted to admit. A medic finished checking his chest and nodded. "You're fine, bruised, but no damage." Elias stood and thanked her, then walked toward Saris. She noticed him immediately. "You should be resting," she said. "So should you," he replied. "If you get tired." She considered that. Fatigue is relative. They walked together down a quieter corridor, away from the noise. Emergency lighting still glowed faintly along the floor. Through a wide viewport, Elias could see stars drifting past, cold and distant, uncaring. "You said this was a test," Elias said. "Who was testing us?" Saris folded her hands as she walked. "A coalition that calls itself the Harmonized Authority." "That sounds peaceful," Elias said dryly. "They believe peace is achieved through balance," she replied, "and balance is maintained through control." Elias stopped walking. "They attacked civilians." "Yes." "And you still call it balance?" Sarah stopped too and turned to face him. For the first time, her calm expression cracked slightly. "Balance," she said carefully, "often looks cruel when you are standing beneath it." Elias studied her face. "Did they test your people too?" Her silence was answer enough. "They are old," she continued. "Older than your species. Older than mine. They survived by deciding who was allowed to grow and who was not." "And now we're on the list," Elias said. "Yes." They resumed walking. "How long have they been watching us?" he asked. "Since your first faster-than-light signal," Saris replied. "You reached farther than expected. Faster than expected. That seems to be a theme," Elias said. Saris glanced at him. "You find humor in danger?" "Habit," he said. "If you don't laugh, you panic." "That is effective," she said thoughtfully. They reached a small observation chamber, empty and quiet. Saris stepped inside and gestured for Elias to follow. The door slid shut behind them, sealing out the noise. "For what it is worth," she said, "you fought well." Elias let out a short breath. "Coming from you, I'm not sure if that's comforting or terrifying." Her lips curved slightly. "Both can be true." He leaned against the railing, looking out at the stars. "You could have told us all this before. About the authority." "About the test? Yes," she agreed. "And then what would you have done?" "Prepared," he said without hesitation. "According to whose expectations?" she asked. "Theirs or yours?" Elias frowned. "You think preparation would have made it worse?" "I know it would have," she said. "They wanted to see your natural response, not a performance." Elias was quiet for a moment. "So we passed?" Saris did not answer right away. "They learned," she said finally. "You do not freeze. You do not wait for permission. You protect, even when it costs you." "That sounds like a good thing," Elias said. "It is," she said, "and it is why they will be afraid." A sharp tone sounded in Elias's ear as his comm activated. A human officer's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Rook, command wants you in briefing room 3, now." Elias looked at Saris. "That's my cue," she nodded. "I will join you." The briefing room was crowded when they arrived. Officers, diplomats, analysts. Screens showed frozen images of the attackers, energy signatures, movement patterns. The mood was tight, focused, angry. The human commander from earlier stood at the center. "We've analyzed the data," she said. "This wasn't a random strike. It was controlled, limited. Every move was measured. Just like you said." Saris inclined her head. "So now what?" another officer demanded. "We wait for the next test?" "No," Elias said before Saris could answer. All eyes turned to him. "We don't wait," he continued. We learn faster than they expect.
We adapt. That's easy to say, the officer snapped. They're older.
Stronger, more advanced. Ceres stepped forward. The room quieted again. They are older, she said. Not stronger.
Not anymore.
She touched a control on the table. The screen changed, showing a slow-motion replay of the fight in Dock 7. Humans and Kirellin moving together. Improvised tactics. Split-second decisions. You change under pressure, Sarah said. You do not follow patterns for long. That frightens them. The commander crossed her arms. So what do you suggest? Bah. Saris looked around the room, meeting each gaze in turn. You stop thinking of yourselves as students, she said, and start acting like variables. Elias felt a strange spark of pride. The meeting stretched on. Plans were made. Defensive protocols updated. Messages drafted to Earth and the colonies. Humanity would not hide this attack. They would learn from it. Hours later, Elias found himself alone again in the corridor. Exhaustion finally catching up to him. He leaned against the wall, eyes closed. Ceres approached quietly. You are thinking too loudly, she said. He opened one eye. Didn't know that was possible. For your species, she said. It often is. He straightened. What happens now, between us? She considered the question seriously. Now, she said, we decide what we are to each other. Allies, he suggested. Perhaps, she said. But alliances can be temporary. Friends, he tried. A pause. Too soon. Elias smiled faintly. Fair. She looked at him, really looked at him, as if measuring something new. My people believed gentleness was safety, she said. Yours believes strength is survival, and you think both are wrong? Elias said. I think, she replied, that choosing when to be gentle and when to be strong is what truly endures. The station lights dimmed briefly as power rerouted, then steadied again. Cirrus turned toward the viewport. The authority will return, she said. Not with questions next time. Elias joined her, staring out into the stars. Then we'll be ready, he said. She nodded slowly. Yes, she agreed. You will. Far beyond the station, unseen and patient, something ancient watched the data streaming in. And for the first time in a very long time, it hesitated. Dot felt like a neutral station. It felt like a line drawn in space. Ships arrived almost constantly now. Human ships from nearby systems. Kirellin vessels, smooth and silent. Others, too, species that had been watching quietly and now wanted to see what humanity would do next. Corridors filled with new faces, new languages, and a careful tension that never fully faded. Elias barely slept. When he did, he dreamed of pressure, of being held still while the universe decided something about him. He stood inside one of the station's temporary command centers, staring at a holographic map of the surrounding sector. Dozens of small lights marked friendly ships. Farther out, dim red points hovered at the edge of sensor range, watching, waiting. They're probing us again, an analyst said. Long-range scans. No weapons charged. They want to see how we react, Elias replied. Sari stood beside him, hands folded, eyes on the map. Yes. They are measuring confidence. Then let's give them some, Elias said. Human engineers worked non-stop. Cargo bays turned into workshops. Civilian tools became defensive systems. Old mining drones were stripped down and rebuilt into fast-moving sensor platforms. Nothing elegant, nothing perfect, but everything adaptable. Ceres watched it all with quiet focus. This is not how most species prepare for conflict, she said as she observed a group of engineers arguing loudly while assembling a weapon mount that clearly hadn't been designed for that purpose. Elias glanced at them. Too messy, too alive, she said. Others plan until certainty appears. You act until it does. A Kirillin officer approached Saris and spoke softly. She listened, then nodded. They have confirmed it, she said to Elias. The Authority fleet is mobilizing. Elias felt his jaw tighten. How long? Less than a cycle, she replied. They are not coming to destroy Haven Ring. Then what? To force a choice. The first warning came as a ripple through space. Sensors screamed. Stars bent slightly on the displays as something massive exited faster than light travel just beyond the system's edge. Then another, and another. The command center filled with voices. Multiple contacts! Energy readings off the scale! They're forming a perimeter! Elias watched the red lights multiply, forming a wide arc around the station. Not close enough to strike. Close enough to threaten. Siri spoke calmly. They want us contained. A transmission request appeared on the main screen. The room went quiet. Put it through, the commander ordered. The image resolved slowly. A tall alien figure appeared, its form wrapped in layered metallic fabric that shifted like liquid. Its face was long, eyes dark and unreadable, voice smooth and emotionless. This is Arbiter Vale of the Harmonized Authority, it said. You have exceeded projected variance. Elias folded his arms. That tends to happen when people get attacked. Vale's gaze shifted briefly toward him. Your presence is noted. Elias stiffened. You've been doing homework. We do not waste observation, Vale replied. You have demonstrated potential instability. Sirius stepped forward. You attacked a neutral station. We conducted a limited assessment, Vale said. The results are... concerning. How so? The commander demanded. Vale's eyes flicked across the room. Humanity responds to threat with creativity rather than submission. This disrupts established balance. Elias leaned closer to the display. Funny thing about balance, he said. It usually favors whoever defines it. A faint pause followed. Humanity will be given a choice, Vale said. Accept oversight, limits on expansion. Guidance. And if we refuse? The commander asked. Vale's voice did not change. Then you will be corrected. Silence filled the room. Siri spoke. You fear them? Vale turned its gaze to her. Your people were once like them. You survived by learning restraint. We survived, Sirius replied, by learning when restraint was a lie. The transmission ended. The Authority fleet did not move closer. They did not fire. They waited. They're daring us, Elias said. Yes, Saris agreed. They expect hesitation. Human command erupted into discussion. Some argued for diplomacy. Others for immediate defense. All knew the truth. Humanity was outmatched in raw power. Elias looked at the map again. Open a channel, he said. The commander stared at him. To who? To everyone, Elias replied. Every ship, every species watching this. Minutes later, the broadcast went live. Cameras showed Elias standing beside Saris, the station behind them still scarred, but standing. This is Elias Rook of humanity, he began. Haven Ring was attacked, not conquered. Tested. He paused, choosing his words carefully. We didn't ask for this, but we won't hide from it either. We are not asking anyone to fight for us, only to watch. Saris stepped forward. The Authority believes control creates peace, she said. They believe unpredictability is danger, but growth has never been predictable. Not for them. Not for us. The broadcast ended. The waiting stretched on. Then, slowly, something changed. A small ship moved closer to the station. Not human. Not Kiralan. A third species. Then another. And another. Not forming a fleet, forming a presence. They're choosing, Elias whispered. The Authority fleet reacted at once. Ships shifted position. Energy building. A warning shot flashed across space, bright and terrible, passing close to Haven Ring but striking nothing. The station shook. Human ships moved instantly. Not toward the enemy, but outward, spreading unpredictably, breaking formation before one could be established. "Deploy the decoys!" Elias shouted. Modified drones launched in every direction, emitting false signals, mimicking warships, scattering sensor data. Kirellan vessels moved with precision, weaving between human ships, amplifying defenses, redirecting energy. The Authority fired again. This time, Haven Ring answered. Not with a single weapon, but dozens of small actions. Redirected power. Overloaded shields used as weapons. Docked freighters released modified cargo that detonated into clouds of interference. Nothing the Authority expected. "Human tactics are incoherent," an Authority officer shouted over open channels. Elias heard it and smiled grimly. That's the point. Sari stood beside him, eyes bright. "You are doing it again," she said. "Doing what?" Elias asked. Becoming something new under pressure. The battle did not last long. The Authority did not push harder. They couldn't. Too many variables.
Elias exhaled slowly. That tends to upset people.
Saris studied him. "It should." The station lights dimmed briefly as another power cycle completed. Repairs were nearly finished. Haven Ring would survive. "So what happens to the Authority now?" Elias asked. "They will not attack again soon," Cirrus said. "Not openly. They have learned something dangerous. That they can't control everything? That control creates resistance," she replied, "and resistance creates strength." Elias nodded. "Then they'll try something else." "Yes." He turned to look at her fully. "And you? What happens to you?" Saris met his gaze. "I remain." "That simple?" he asked. "For me," she said. "Yes." Elias smiled faintly. "Good." They walked together through the station, passing groups of humans and aliens working side by side. No one flinched now when Saris passed. Some nodded respectfully. Others watched her with curiosity instead of fear. Word had spread. They entered a large chamber that had once been a ceremonial hall. Now it was filled with representatives from many species. Some stood, some sat, some hovered. All were focused on the center. The human commander spoke clearly. "Haven Ring stands." A murmur rippled through the room. "We were tested," she continued, "not just by force, but by expectation. We were expected to fall into place. We didn't." Elias watched faces shift. Some looked inspired. Some looked worried. Siri stepped forward. "My people once faced the same choice," she said. "We chose safety over growth. It kept us alive. It also kept us small." She paused. "Humanity has chosen differently." Silence followed, heavy and thoughtful. A representative from another species spoke up.
"What are you asking?" Elias answered this time. "Nothing," he said.
"We're not forming an empire. We're not asking for protection or obedience." He spread his hands. "We're asking you to decide for yourselves." That landed harder than any demand. After the assembly ended, Elias felt the weight finally settle into his bones. Not exhaustion, responsibility. He found Cirrus again near the same wall where she had slammed him days ago. The dent was still visible, metal bent inward slightly. He touched it lightly. "You left a mark," he said. She followed his gaze. "So did you." "I was the one thrown," he said. "Yes," she replied, "but you stood back up."
Elias looked at her. "You could have crushed me."
"Easily." "Yes," she said again. "Why didn't you?" he asked. Saris was quiet for a long moment. "Because," she said, "strength that does not choose restraint becomes tyranny." Elias absorbed that, and gentleness without strength, he added, becomes weakness. She smiled, not small this time. "Real." "You are learning," she said. "So are you," he replied. Time passed. Days turned into cycles. Ships came and went. Messages spread across human space and beyond. Stories changed as they traveled, growing louder, sharper. The galaxy adjusted. Not smoothly. Not peacefully. But honestly. Elias received orders to return to Earth. Promotion. New responsibilities. New risks. He stood at the docking bay as his ship prepared to depart. Sari stood with him. "This is not goodbye," she said. "No," Elias agreed. "More like, see you when things get complicated again." "They will," she said calmly. He hesitated, then offered his hand. A human gesture. Simple. Ceres looked at it for a moment, then placed her smaller hand in his. Her grip was gentle, carefully chosen. "Human Elias Rook," she said. "Your species has reminded mine why we once feared becoming strong." Elias smiled. "And you reminded us that being underestimated can be useful." The ship's ramp lowered. Elias stepped back, then paused. "Next time," he said, "maybe don't throw me into a wall." She considered this seriously. "I will attempt restraint. That's all I can ask," he said, laughing softly. As his ship pulled away from Haven Ring, Elias watched the station shrink into the distance, scarred, busy, alive. Somewhere far beyond, the harmonized authority watched humanity again. Their models rewrote themselves endlessly, failing every time. Humanity no longer fit the equations. They never had. And now, the galaxy knew it. Others looked confused, trying to fit what they had just seen into what they believed they knew. Elias rubbed his chest as he walked. The pain was fading, but the memory was not. He had been in fights before. He had been hurt before. This was different. It wasn't just strength. It was precision. Control. "How many attackers?" Elias asked, finally breaking the silence. Sirius did not slow down. "Unknown," she replied. "At least 3 boarding teams, possibly more, operating remotely." "You said this wasn't supposed to happen today," he said. "I said it was expected," she corrected. "Not predicted." They reached a sealed intersection where a group of humans worked to override a damaged door. Sparks flew as tools bit into warped metal. Beyond the door, something thudded hard. Once, then again. Elias stepped forward instinctively. Saris raised one finger. He stopped. The door burst inward with a screech of tearing alloy. Smoke poured through the opening, thick and gray. A shape moved inside it, large and angular, not human. Before Elias could react, one of the Kirilan guards moved. It crossed the distance in a blur, striking the shape with a single precise motion. There was a sharp crack, and the figure collapsed, metal limbs folding inward. It hit the floor and did not move again. Silence followed. The smoke cleared enough for Elias to see the wreckage. The attacker was a machine, tall and heavy, with scorched plating and damaged weapons. It looked expensive, designed for war. "Drones!" Elias muttered. "Someone's throwing a lot of resources at this." "Yes," Sarah said, "which means the message matters more than the result." Human engineers rushed in to secure the corridor. One of them stared at the fallen machine, then at the Kirillin guard, eyes wide. "That thing weighed," he began. Sarah's continued walking. They entered a command room overlooking a wide section of the station interior. Too many watching eyes. Slowly, their ships began to pull back, not retreating, reconsidering. As the last of the red lights faded, Havenring remained, damaged, scarred, unbroken. In the quiet that followed, Elias let out a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Ceres looked at him.
"They will not forget this," she said. "Good," Elias replied.
"Neither will we." Far away, in the depths of controlled space, the harmonized authority updated its models. Humanity no longer fit, and that frightened them more than any weapon ever could. The quiet after the authority fleet withdrew felt unreal. Havenring still shook with distant repairs, but space beyond the viewports was calm again. Stars returned to their normal shapes, no red markers, no warning tones, just emptiness. Elias stood alone in the observation corridor, hands resting on the railing. His reflection stared back at him from the glass, looking older than it had a few days ago. Not tired. Changed. Behind him, the station lived. Crews worked through exhaustion. Engineers laughed too loudly while fixing things that should not have worked, but somehow did. Medics moved from patient to patient, steady and focused. Humanity had taken a hit and kept moving. That mattered. Ceres approached without sound, as she often did. Elias did not turn right away. He already knew she was there. "It is finished," she said. "For now," Elias replied. "Yes," she agreed. "For now is often all anyone truly has." They stood together, watching a human cargo ship drift into dock, its hull scorched, its markings uneven where repairs had been rushed. It looked rough. It looked alive.
"My people are speaking with yours," Sarah said. "About formal alliance." Elias raised an eyebrow.
"That sounds serious?" "It is," she said. "And controversial. Because of us?" he asked. "Because of what you represent," she corrected. "Change without permission.